And I think that's extraordinary, because that actually, as I said to the crowd before, it forces you to use your brain and to really, okay, if we're not going to focus on the science fiction, what is going on here? Like, what is this really about? So where did you begin with the idea for this film? Two of you began.
Yeah, well, Mike was listening to a lot of Dr. Richard Berenson at the time, who's this wonderful astrophysicist, and I would come over to Mike's apartment. He would be lying on the floor in the living room, and Dr. Richard Berenson, who narrates the film, he's that big booming voice that sounds like the voice of the cosmos, and Mike would be listening to that, and then I started listening to that too, and I don't know, we were inspired by his work and by the idea of sort of reconnecting to the cosmos and all that is unknown. I think we get locked in these cities and we forget about the stars, and that's where it started. And then Mike had made a beautiful piece of video art too that I think really inspired both of us, where he interviewed himself. So it was like Mike on one side being like, yo dude, what do you think of that? And like Mike on the other side being like, yeah, that's cool.
That was the whole conversation. We have a movie here.
And so the idea of the other Earth, was that born out of, because to me it seems like, okay, you start with these big ideas about what would you do if you got a chance to interview yourself. Okay, under what circumstances would you be able to talk to yourself or a version of yourself? Is that where the idea of the alternate Earth came from?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Well, we were thinking about there's this primal urge, I think, that we have to not be alone, and part of being human is that, you know, you have all these friends and all these people around you, but this internal monologue that you have is a very sort of quiet, alone place. We come from a singular point of view, and we thought, well, maybe if you could sit across from that person, and that internal monologue was externalized, maybe that would create an emotion that both satisfies that need for us not to be alone, and yet also allows you to judge that person. Like, would you like that other version of you, or would you dislike them? And in this movie, could you forgive that person? And we thought about that, and then we thought, wouldn't it be cool if all 6.3 million of us could imagine that possibility for ourselves, even as we were watching this film? So it was like the big concept came first, and then we decided to tell this story of Rhoda Williams.
And it's interesting because, I mean, we're talking about, I'll ask the long question so you can answer it. No, that we're talking about the science fiction aspect, but that, as I was saying before, you kind of, a lot of times just push that to the end, because that's not really what it's about. It's about this character that is in desperate need of repair and just just a jump start of some sort to get her life going again. And I think she knows what she has to do, and then she goes to do it, and kind of ends up becoming a romance.
Yeah, in some ways you could take away the other Earth concept, and the film would still work as a dramatic piece, and you know, that dramatic piece could be set in Chicago, it could be set in Hawaii, it could be set in a submarine, not really, but it could be set anywhere. But we wanted to set it on the backdrop of this duplicate Earth, which like literally looms above us, asking that dramatic question of, you know, if there was another version. So it like informs her inner world as much as it is the outer context, but it is just the context within which this drama unfolds.
Brit, first of all, I was telling the audience before that you, a year ago, I had no idea who you were. In January, when I started hearing about your two films, I heard about them all the time. And then I remember that Sound of My Voice was on the schedule at South by Southwest. At least from my perspective, it was the film that all the critics that I knew were talking about and saying you have to see. The Future, I think, was not The Future, this film, Another Earth, I believe was like a secret screening, wasn't it? Yeah, so people didn't know about it. And it actually happened to be, it was at almost the exact same time as like Ain't It Cool had a 15th anniversary panel, so I almost had to miss it, but it was, so suddenly you're like everywhere. At least for like a few months you were everywhere. And now, I think now that the movies are going to start coming out, you're going to be everywhere again. So, where did you come from? Where did you come from? Where were you before?
Chicago. Actually, I was born here. That's my hometown. My cousin Michael is here somewhere. There's my cousin Michael, my Uncle Jake. Michael, Maggie, hi. That's so rad. So, yeah, but actually how this all really came about is Georgetown. I went to Georgetown, and when I was a freshman, I came there, I was majoring in economics, I was sort of doing a different thing, and I went to the Georgetown Student Film Festival, which was weird for Georgetown because everybody there is going to work on Capitol Hill, and they had this film festival, and the films were really bad. In fact, they were so bad, they a lot of camera shaking, they kind of made you nauseous. I was going to leave because I felt like I might throw up. And then this beautiful film came on, and it was so poetic and rhythmic, and the story was complicated, and it took my breath away, and it won first place. And Mike and Zal, who directed Sound of My Voice, Mike, came up to accept the award for this film. And I saw the two of them, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are just, I'm so lucky that I happen to be coinciding with these two artists coming through this school. And so I stalked them through the supermarkets of Georgetown. I followed them. I followed Mike, and I kind of was like, hey guys, can I just hold the light on the movie, or do sound, or whatever you need?
You should star in the movie.
And then we started making little movies together, and I'm endlessly inspired by Mike. I mean, he has a real courage for just making things and not being afraid and not waiting for permission for anybody to be like, yes, you can do this. And that's really how this project came about, which is we shot it at Mike's mom's house.
And literally, you didn't have permission because you didn't get permits for this movie, right? It was just sort of. I did hear one story. I'm not gonna. I want somebody to tell about the scene where you were coming out of prison. That's a really good story. How you shot that?
Yeah. Sure. So we needed we needed production value. So we needed a prison, and of course we couldn't afford to pay for this prison. So we were driving around Connecticut looking for a real prison, and we found one. And so at the time it was Brit and I in the car, and I had this Sony EX3 camera, and Brit was in her outfit, and I was like, just go up to the front and turn around and come back out, and I'll get the exterior shot. And there was a yoga mat in the back of the car, so she takes the yoga mat out, and she walks up sort of confidently to there's two prison policemen standing outside, and they're chatting, and she walks by and walks inside and says, I'm here to teach yoga. And they're like, okay, hold on, let's go check something out. And she puts the yoga mat down, turns around, walks out, gets totally into character, and walks out of prison for the first time after 4 years, and I'm sitting there in the car filming.
I think he in the ignition, because by the time I reached the window, he's like, go back and do it again. And I turned around to go back, and the police were coming towards me, and I was like, I don't think we got another take on that.
Actually, we did get surrounded by the police. We didn't actually get away with that.
Yeah.
We got caught. We got pulled in.
Then Mike came with the genius idea of saying that we were location scouts for a much bigger movie. They had us over for tea. We had tea with the warden.
Here's my card. I hope you like my prison, and we can work this out later.
A lot of times when directors come to do these Q&A